Hi everyone, this is Abel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have a lot of really interesting fantasy and sci-fi books. We're going to talk about all of those. This is going to be great. Let's get ready. But before we start, remember that if you enjoy science fiction and fantasy books, this is the perfect place for you. So if you want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing, leave a like, share this video. Thank you. Now, let's talk about an author that is pretty new to me, but he's not new in the game. He has a bunch of series. I put a graphic here to show you the many books that he has published, all really interesting to me. The first one is an epic fantasy series called The War of the 12. Then we have the Ruined Gods series, which is heavily inspired with Greek history and mythology. You can see it by the covers here. And then we have Mothers of Sorrow, which is the most recent release. I'm not sure if it is already been released or if it will be pretty soon released in the future. And the first book is called The City of Mist and Tears. So I will tell you more about all of this series as soon as I get to any of them, because I will tell you, I'm putting all of those in my wish list, all of them, and potentially in my near future TBR. But let's try to see the most recent release, okay? Let's try to talk about a little bit more about The City of Mist and Tears. So this is a story which is supposed to be connected to the main epic fantasy story that I mentioned just a few seconds ago, and it is about a city called Kezelgard, and which is described as this huge city that it is so incredibly large that if you look at it from far away, it looks like a mountain, and it has this ominous atmosphere surrounding it. It says, the description says that nobody goes in and nobody gets out from the city. So it's been enclosed. It is a walled city, and there's this vague but also really creepy and ominous description of some kind of blight or enemies or menace around the city. It says that there's this wall of white getting closer to the city, and that's why it's been shielded from the outside and nobody can go out and nobody can get in. And then in the description says that the foundation of the city are cracking. Something's going on, and I don't know if it is literally the city is literally crumbling down. It's going to kill everyone that lives there, men, women, and child, or if some kind of a supernatural threat, because it says that it's going to consume everyone inside the city. The cover is really creepy, but also beautiful. I like the stark contrast there between the city on the background, the character on the front, and the really strong colors of the font and the description there. The title really pops out, and it's really interesting. I'm really curious to see if we are supposed to read this after the main series, the epic fantasy series from this author, or if we can read it as a standalone or as the first of another series. But I'm really curious. If any of you have read this, please let me know and let's chat about it. Because as I told you, that epic fantasy series is pretty long. It's pretty popular. So if any of you have read any of those, please let me know, and I will absolutely let you know more about this series and any of those books that I'm going to read pretty soon. Traitor's Son by Melissa J. Cave. This is a high fantasy, epic fantasy story that really looks like the things that I love. Character-driven stories. This is about two characters, two main POV. The first one is called Raymond, and the other one is Ophelia. I think it's supposed to be sounding like Ophelia, so I'm not sure. Can I call her Ophelia? I'm sorry, Melissa, if you're not okay with that. Please feel free to hate me. But this is a story about a Raymond, which is a knight who has a complex past, kind of a conflicting relationship with the Empire, because he says that he's trying to build a place, a safe place for all of his beloved ones and his army away from the poisonous intrigues of the Empire. But the only thing more difficult than winning a war is securing the peace. And he is living in a place that it's kind of secluded, but it says that he's forced to divide himself between the breathtaking labor of building a city, so a safe place for him and all of the people that he loves, and the looks like the area around this city is infested, so he has to use his prowess as a warrior, a knight, and as a strategist to protect the place and the people that he loves. And the other storyline is that he's falling in love with a princess, an exiled princess, which is Ophelia, and that relationship is complicated in a way because she's harboring a lot of secrets. And that, of course, we are going to discover through the story. So I get this. I think this is going to be high fantasy, epic fantasy, really character driven, and that this central relationship will be really important for the development of the story. And I don't know how much of a romance there will be, but I'm really interested in this. The cover is really atmospheric, and it sounds like a kind of a slow burn with a slow and deliberate build up to an explosive ending. Let's see how it goes. I'm really interested in this. I will let you know absolutely as soon as possible. The Envoys of War by Dave Lawson. As soon as I read that this is inspired by Michael J. Sullivan and Nicholas Eames, this really piqued my interest, because I like when we have fantasy books with good characters, good dialogue, interesting world building, a nice plot. But when they have witty banter, when they're able to bounce off each other in a really interesting way, and when they can balance, when the author is able to balance that witty and in a way funny side of the story with a high stakes story on a plot level and on a personal level and on a character development side of the story, that it's really rare, and that it's chef kiss. The few books that I've read that are able to do that are between my favorite. That's why I'm so in love with the Rhaeria series by Michael J. Sullivan that I never mentioned, I think, or really rarely mentioned this in this channel. I should fix that. But about this story, it says that we have two main protagonists. The first one is Gen, or Jen, I think it's Gen, and the other one is Cordin. She's this kind of girl boss, really self-centered character, and that she's really happy with her traveling life, drinking wine, hitting things with her sword, until she gets assigned a mission to deliver intelligence to a vital military intelligence to an allied nation. The problem is that this mission is a cover-up for another mission, the real one, which is to spy on her friend and colleague, who is called Cordin, who looks like a really interesting person, because it says that he's the worst kind of libertine, brash, arrogant, the one that he's on the run from half the husbands of the kingdom. Kudos to you, Cordin. Your life is really interesting. So she's tasked to investigate him because he's suspected to be a traitor. So the real mission is this one. The fact is that they have been, those two main character, friends for a very long time. So Gen is, she really doesn't believe that he's a traitor, but at the same time we're going to discover why she has accepted this mission, why she's going to investigate on him if she doesn't trust, if she doesn't believe that he could possibly be a traitor. But at the same time, the mission game becomes complicated, and they have to decide if they want to be loyal to themselves and their nation, or if they're going to struggle with a larger ongoing conflict. So I'm really curious about this one. I really wanted to see how everything shapes up, and I will let you know absolutely really soon, as soon as I read it. The Ranger by Eamon Bradley, even if in the cover he is called E.H. Bradley. I call it Eamon because it sounds much more epic and much more fantasy oriented. What a cool name. People are really lucky when they have those kind of amazing name, or really smart if they decide that that's a pen name. If it's a pseudonym, kudos to you. That's a great decision. And the cover gives me that old style epic fantasy story. And when you have a ranger on the cover, you know you're in for a treat for that kind of huge epic fantasy story that we all like. Of course, it is about a ranger, but he's a kind of inherited this position from his father. He's called Eraden. His father was called Michel or Michael. And the names sound a little bit French. Michel Denage, or it could be Michael Denage. I don't know. I'm confused, but I'm also really curious about this. And it's the new ranger, the protagonist of this story. He's been sent to investigate some kind of a mystery far away from the city. We know that he's been sent to do this because there's been this mysterious message from the King Crow. So there's something really wrong, something really wrong going on in this world. But the position of the ranger and the kind that he has this kind of burden from this position inherited by his father, and the fact that this journey is going to be really long and dangerous. That is my jam. That's the kind of fantasy, the classic fantasy quest that I really crave for, that I really love and enjoy. So even if the description is really vague, just the basic generic setting of the story, I'm interested, because I like when the cover gives you that old style fantasy vibes, those vibes. So yeah, I'm really interested. I'll let you know as soon as possible. The Aestus series, we have 2 books out. The first one is The City, the second one is The Colony by Attwell. This is a science fiction story, a little bit of a dystopian environment, because the surface of the planet, I don't think it's Earth, I think it's another planet, is not inhabitable. Because of the extreme temperature, the heat is incredible, so the city has been built underground. There's another threat. There are beasts, creatures roaming around on the surface, and they're pretty lethal, to the point that the protagonist of this story, which is called Josie, she lost her brother, who's been killed by those creatures, and herself, she's been wounded, lethally wounded, and left for dead after an attack from those creatures. And many years after, it looks like she is suffering from extreme PTSD because of what happened. But she was able to become a solar engineer, so working to keep the colony and the city going on, and having enough energy to support the entire city and the population. And she's been assigned a new project, a new job. It looks like that involves facing a little bit of those traumatic past. So she refused to be part of that until someone discovered new evidences and new traces of what happened when her brother died. So in the end, she decided to be part of this new mission, probably to uncover more about the death, the loss of her brother. So this is really interesting for me. It looks like that kind of deep, hard sci-fi story that has a huge emphasis on the character development too. And it looks like there is a huge mystery, because it says that those beasts and the prohibitive environment are not the only threat to the welfare of that city and the colony in general. So there's something even more ominous going on. I like the minimalistic cover, I like the vibes, I like a good dystopian when I found one, and yeah, I can't wait to have the time and the chance to read this one. I will absolutely let you know more about this as soon as I read it. Now, let's talk about the Army of One series by Baptiste, Pinson. We have 2 books out. The first one is Blood of Midgard, and the second one is Beast of Jotunheimer. Jotunheimer. I don't know how to pronounce this. I will never be able to correctly pronounce this. I'm sorry. Of course, this is a Norse mythology inspired fantasy series. And it's about that jolly good guy of Odin deciding that he wants more people sitting on the benches of Valhalla. So he decides to spark conflict and to get more people killed. And he sends his this warrior Drake to go and do exactly that. Doing war, as soon as I understand from the description of the book. But the problem is that Drake has a personal conflict because he doesn't want his beloved one to be killed during this series of missions that he has to do to make Odin happy. So there is this huge struggle, internal struggle, so he is torn between doing what he has to do and to protect this woman. And at the same time we have, of course, Loki, who's from his shell is trying to work his device of the plan against Odin. So I like this one because the synopsis is short and sweet and the general setting of the book is really straightforward. And I love the covers too, which is never a bad thing. It actually is a plus for me. And it looks like the stories are pretty short and sweet. So let's see how it goes. I'm really excited about this. I have good vibes about this, and it looks like Baptiste Pinson is really appreciated as an indie author. He has other series. We'll take a little bit of time to talk more about the rest of the books that he has written, and I'll let you know more about this series as soon as I read it. Absolutely. The Legacy of Bullum by Timothy Wolff. We have 3 books out in this series. The first one is Platinum Tinted Darkness. The second one is Tears of the Maelstrom. And the third is Age of Arrogance. Let's take a look to the first book so that we do not spoil the rest of the series. This has a nice, really intricate world building regarding the relationship between normal people and gods, which are real and are really influential in that world, because it looks that when they're left unchecked, when the gods are left unchecked, they bring destruction, chaos, and death. So it sounds like most of those gods are not really nice deities. And then in this the setting of the story, we have a group of guardians, 6 people. They pledge their life to defending people from the attacks of the gods. And it sounds like they have to dedicate their whole life to do just that. So to be at war with the gods and to try to keep them at bay. And that means that if something happened on a smaller level, so battles between kingdoms or other kinds of skirmishes, they're not supposed to be interested in that. They're supposed to stay out of this lower level of conflict, because they have that incredibly dangerous commitment with warring and battling with the gods. But the protagonist of this story, she is one of those 6 people, and at a certain point her homeland gets invaded by another kingdom, and she decides to break her oath and go there and fight to protect her people. Of course, she's not supposed to do that, and by doing that she gains the attention from one of those gods, which is both a good and a bad thing, because it looks like this god is giving her the power to protect her people in an extraordinary way, kind of an unheard amount of power. But at the same time, that power is corrupting. So the novel has this interesting duality between the desire to protect the people at the same time to keep the word, so to being reliable after such a huge promise, because the menace of the threat of the gods is real, and they've been doing incredibly bad thing for that kingdom, and at the same time she wants to do the right thing for her people. So yeah, it's a nice, interesting internal conflict, and I'm really curious to see how it develops on a larger scale, and how the author is able to balance the internal struggle, the character development, and the wider conflict of the story. So yeah, I've heard amazing things about the stories and great reviews, so I'm really curious, really eager to see how it works, and I'll let you know as soon as I read it. Any Human Power by Manda Scott. This is really difficult to describe. I've been kindly offered a arc to review this book, and I decided to do it because it is out of my comfort zone when it comes around science fiction and dystopian novels, but it is generally so out there that the concept and the development of the story and the setting, it is challenging to properly describe and address. What I get from the description that I've got, and by looking at the website of the author, the point of view is from someone who's passed away to a better life, and she was able to retain her mind and her lucidity after losing her mortal body by being in the mind of a crow somehow. And she stays in between life and death, and in some way she's able to meet and communicate her grandson and her descendants in general by via lucid dreaming, because she learned that as a technique, and somehow her family is able to do it. And I know exactly the mechanics of it. I've just heard about lucid dreaming. The closest thing that I know about lucid dreaming is, and lucid dreaming in general, is the movie Inception by Christopher Nolan, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. But this is on a different level because it used as a means to communicate between her and her family. And it looks like the novel has these generational feelings, that he's not able to change anything in the reality of her legacy or of the people that are her descendants, but she can influence them and to do better decisions and to use her wisdom and to help them in having a better life. So the novel is been marketed as science fiction and dystopian. So we'll probably see during the development of the many arcs different kinds of future and many stages of future and probably many generations, and that makes it incredibly fascinating for me because I like stories that involve different generation and different kind of development of the future. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how the story works. I've seen very good reviews for this, which says that it is very multi-layered and it's beautifully written. It is really interesting. It has this ethereal vibes. It has those exactly really difficult to describe atmospheres, but it makes it even more fascinating for me. I like a challenging book once in a while. Yeah, I'll absolutely let you know more about it as soon as I read it. Let's talk about another of those authors that I have heard about for quite a while, but that I still haven't touched anything that they have produced. But I'm really curious about all the things that they have produced. This one is Shami Stovall. Shami? I'm sorry. But she has a ton of books and different series. We have urban fantasy, we have high fantasy, lit RPG, and space opera, and sci-fi thriller and adventure. A ton of books. I put a graphics here that you can easily screenshot if you're interested in any of those books. probably more than one graphics, a little bit, a bit of slides to help you understand if anything of this large production is interesting for you. But the one that I probably put my hands on, the one that I probably read first, is the Half-Life Empire, which is a sci-fi thriller adventure. The protagonist of this specific series, at least of the first book, is a hacker called Kita Yamasaki, and the description says that she will do anything to escape the post-apocalyptic landscape that was the result of the forever winter. And she catches an opportunity. She finds evidences of a place that can shelter over a quarter million people, kind of an oasis away from this dystopian future when everything has been freeze. It's a wasteland and it is horrible. And to get to that place, she devises a plan to steal a battery, a fission battery, that it is really important and really sought after, especially for the people living in that oasis. So I assume she's going to use that battery as a bargain chip to buy a safe entrance in this oasis. And she brings with her daughter and a ragtag group of people that are trying to escape from that wasteland where they live. And it looks like she's not sure if all of those people can be trusted, and they will end up helping her or betraying her in that travel, in their journey to get to that beautiful place, to that oasis, when she can have a better life for herself and for her daughter. It's really interesting. This author is very well respected. She has won awards too. Yeah, I love when I find a new author that have an extensive back catalogs and a lot of books that I can dive in if I actually like the first one, or if I decide that the first one was not my jam, but maybe the others are too. So yeah, I like when I have multiple chances to love a new author. Yes, and if you have read this, which is quite popular, and it has an audiobook too. I think most of these books from this author have audiobooks edition too. This one has been published by Podium too. So yeah, I would like to listen to the audiobooks too. Let's see how it goes, because Audible in Italian is a little bit tricky. Not everything that it is available in the US and the UK, it is always also available in Italy. So let's see. I would like to listen to this on Audible. But if I can, I'll go for a paperback too. Let's see how it goes. I'll let you know as soon as I read it. Reviews. I've just finished a couple of days ago Night Owls by Stephen Gay. I was lucky enough to have a review copy for the first book and the second one, which I'll try and read in January, maybe February. This was really unique, as I've said in my placeholder review on Goodreads. Really unique and really fun, because the story is nothing exactly new, nothing unheard, but the dynamics and the setting are pretty unique. So the story is about our protagonist. He's a young guy that he has lost his father, and he's living on a colony on the moon. And as soon as you begin the story, as soon as you start the ride, you'll see there is a huge divide on a sociological side of things, because there are ultra rich people and people like our protagonist that are struggling to make ends meet, just to try and survive, to pay for debts and to pay for courses that they have to do to try and learn new abilities for his work. He lived with his mother, who's trying to help him paying all of those debts and all of the bills. And so it's not an easy life by any means. The only saving grace that he has, kind of a way to blow up some steam and to lighten the burden and the atmosphere of this place, is that he is part of a group that throws off those incredible huge parties. So there is a huge chunk of the books that has this interest in the rave party culture. So they search for location, and they really give all of they have to gather equipment, lighting, and musics to organize those huge parties. And that's really interesting and really strange for me, because it is completely outside from my comfort zone, and I knew nothing about those, because I was not the kind of guy. I'm not a party guy. I never was a party guy. I know, shocker, that a nerd, high fantasy, epic fantasy, and sci-fi nerd who loves and lives inside books is not a party guy. I know, it's a shocker, but I knew nothing about this. So the dynamics between the guy and his troop, his group of friends, which are really dead set on throwing those enormous and really huge party and really fun party, was like discovering a new civilization for me, to discover a new way of life, completely alien for me. But those dynamics are really interesting, because there is a lot of found family dynamics going on there, and his love interest gets slowly involved in this group of people that really love throwing parties. But aside from this, the core of the story is not about those parties. The core of the story is about the sociological and political struggle, because there is something going on with the welfare of the moon and the organization and the way resources have been distributed between rich people and poor people. And you'll see that this guy, the protagonist, has connection with the seedy underbelly of Luna, how they call it, that moon colony. So he does his regular job. At the same time, he tries to make money by stealing precious things that he resells. And at the beginning of the story, you'll see that he's kind of forced to accept a riskier kind of job, stealing something really, really important. Most of the plot of the beginning is him trying to organize and to execute this job, to steal something really important. And in the around this story, you'll see the political struggle and how relationship between the moon and Earth are really difficult, because on the moon you harness the Ilium tree that is used for the moon and for the Earth too, and at the same time moon has kind of a complicated relationship with the colony on Mars, because a really important figure, which was a founder of the colony on the moon, at a certain point decided to say goodbye to the moon and go and try to colonize Mars, and that left the moon behind on a development, on a cultural standpoint. So they were left behind, and there is this feeling that the moon has not been properly taken care for. So there are a lot of things going on a political side of things, and then the second part of the book becomes much more action-packed, and there is a lot of things that would affect the whole colony and the relationship between the moon, Earth, and Mars. I will say that the first chunk of the book is a kind of hard to swallow. It's not difficult to read by any means. The writing style is really digestible, and it's really nice. It flows beautifully. But aside that, the job stealing that specific item that he wants to resell to pay the bills and to get out from the slump of debts, you kind of struggle to understand where the story is going. Because there are tidbits of the larger conflict, but you can understand there. You ask yourself, what's going on, and why are we? It looks like we are going in circles, trying to understanding the end goal of the story. Because, as I told you, there is a huge emphasis on his personal life, which I like, the character-driven side of the stories, and on the party side of the story. And I will say that in a way, those two parts of the story, the larger conflict and the party side of the story, are kind of at war. And it looks like the novel is a war with itself. And as far as I understand, by reading the acknowledgements side of the story, that part of the novel is from the real life of the author, which is part of this huge community of people that attend party and organize parties. So I can understand the desire to bring in this new aspect and this really important side of the world building, which is interesting. It's unique. It's something that I have never seen around, either in my personal life, but let alone in any kind of SFF novel, which is really interesting. It is admirable. The way it is interwoven with the rest of the story, some kind is a little bit janky, but the more the story shifts the focus toward the larger conflict, the less janky it becomes and the more enjoyable it becomes. And the author itself was really kind to describe the development of the story, and he says that the second book is usually much more beloved than the first one. I guess it is because the focus shifts from that initial status quo to the larger conflict of the story. And I'll absolutely read book 2. In and of itself, this is quite an accomplished story, because the story arc of the protagonist and the ragtag group that found family dynamic, it really works. It's really interesting. The writing style is really nice. The party side of the same things, even if it is new, even if it is really unique and really interestingly done and really detailed too, I was less of a fan of. I don't know, maybe if you know that kind of an environment in our actual world, not on Luna of course, you will find it even more interesting, because you will be able to relate it with it in a more personal way. For me, it was difficult to properly, I won't say understand, but to feel it, to feel the vibes of the story, and to understand why we were devoting so much screen time to that. Okay, but it is interesting, as I said. If you go on in it with an open mind, you will see a really fascinating environment, because the way the moon is described and the society you have on the moon is described is really interesting too. The world building is spot on, and the aesthetics of it are really interesting too. This will work beautifully as an anime. Absolutely, as an animation kind of media, incredible. Or as a graphic novel too, even better. So yeah, it was a really interesting story. I'm really curious to see how books 2 works for me too. And yeah, you should absolutely go and check it out. And then I have read The Council of Athyzia by E.H. Hoskins. This is an high fantasy story that has an interesting setting and an interesting concept. I will say it is a political fantasy, mostly, because the story starts where all the other stories finish. So after the end of the usual big battle with the really bad guy, which in this story is called the Oseomancer, the real story of this series begin, because all the nations and species and cultures of that world have to work together to keep the peace and keep a good relationship between all of those cultures and kingdom and species. And the story is from the point of view mostly of a main character, which is she's a woman that she was tasked to stay in the city in Athyzia, which is kind of a cultural hub for scholars and all the rest. And the world building is around this. The main setting for the story is around this city, which is the center and the place where all the meetings and the politics for this council will take place. And the author decided to give a large chunk of the introductory part of the story describing the arrival of all of those species and races. We see the elves coming in, dwarves, and other kingstorm from all around the entire world for this story. They all come. Not exactly all of them. A few of them decide to send representatives, okay? And you have her point of view, and then you see her mentor, which is the one who actually decided to hold this council and try to make all of those people work together. So it's kind of a slow burn, especially at the beginning, because there is a huge amount of time, of screen time and page count dedicated to describe all of those culture and the representatives from those culture that have personal relationships and affairs too, and personal grievances. So they don't trust other species. You see that the elves are all highbrow, they don't like anyone, they want to keep on himself, but they begrudgingly decided to collaborate with all the others. And you see the dwarves that have other grievances and other troubles with other kingdoms, and you see humans, regular humans that have other problems. So there are regular kind of people, and then you have people with supernatural abilities and cultures and way of lives that really clash with other cultures. And it was really a miracle that all of those people were able to work together to destroy and to defeat and to win the world and destroy the Osiomancer. It was really incredible that they were able to put aside their differences and all the other struggles that they have, the larger political conflict, to win the war. Because it is implied in the story that had they done it sooner, maybe that final war with the Osiomancer could have been entirely avoided. That he used those conflicts to become stronger. And it is also heavily implied that this one, the last of many wars between all of those nations. So they at the end they were able to do it, but when the council actually starts, it is really difficult for them to stomach the mere presence of all the others. So it is really interesting, but it is always pretty. It is also pretty slow too. So the introductory part, I will say 30% of the book, which is dedicated to those. It's really heavy in dialogues heavy, and you have to listen to properly listen. Actually read. I say listen because sometimes I use Alexa to let him read the books out loud for me. And to pay attention to those relationships between all those species and races, because if you don't understand those, you will understand very little of the rest of the story. So it's kind of a slow burn, and it is a political story 100% based on that. The world building is layered, the larger conflict is really interesting, but it takes a while to the story to actually unwind and develop, and to spread the wings and actually take flight. And you would be justified to say, this is too much, this is almost boring, I understand very little of it, and I want to get to the meaty part of the story. But it is rewarding if you wait and you get to the, let's say, the second half of the story. It doesn't change and it doesn't turn the story upside down. It never becomes this bombastic action pieces of story, because I don't think that that's what the author was going for. The themes that get developed during the discussion between those species and kingdom are really interesting, and in a way you can easily see a few parallels with our actual world, with our modern history or recent history, even if the story is not heavy-handed, the author is not trying to shove in your mouth any kind of messaging, but there are a couple of really poignant reflection about the politics of our world and about the way the many cultures that we have in our world interact, struggle, go outward, do peace, and try to collaborate. So many of the themes and the things that the books actually discuss when talking about those species are relevant for us today. And it is a good thing that they get discussed in a book because it's a nice way to frame really interesting conflict in a safe way. So it gives us the ability to reflect on those things from a safe perspective inside a story that's supposed to be for fun. Okay, but it is for fun. It is not only for fun. And I like the way the author did something really unique and this time too, because I have never heard and I've never read anything like it. I have read political conflict too in many other fantasy stories, but never like this. And yeah, I absolutely suggest you to give it a try, give it a fair share. Now try to get to the 50% of the book to understand if it works for you. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if you pass that threshold, you'll see the story becoming much smoother. I will say that I would have loved to have much of an emotional core at the beginning of the story, something to anchor the readers in an easier way, to make us care especially about the protagonist right at the beginning in a stronger way, because you feel like this kind of detachment from her point of view and you wait to become more attached to her for a good chunk of the story. And it takes a little bit to understand what's going on with her past, and the relationship with the rest of the story. I would have loved to have a better, a deeper character work right at the beginning to help us be connected, to find a connection with the story faster. Because there is a lot going on, and a lot of talking, and a lot of politicking, and a lot of scheming, and a lot of betrayal. But if you don't have a strong emotional core there, you will easily lose interest with that, okay? And it will be a shame, because the world building is so interesting, and because the rest of the political conflict is so complex, and it's so worth it. So I would have loved it to have a stronger emotional core at the beginning. But alas, the story is compelling in and of itself. And as I told you, it is so unique, and it is so well developed, especially the second part, that it is worth the risk of finding yourself for a good, even if the book is not really long, for a good chunk of the book, asking yourself, what are we doing? Why are we dwelling with all of those politicking? Where is the actual story starting? Okay? It is worth your time. So give it a look, give it a check, and let me know if you like it. Yeah, absolutely. Try it for yourself. Reading updates. I'm reading, of course, The Curse of the Mistwraith by Johnny Wirtz. It's taking me forever to finish it, but it's not because I'm not loving it. Actually, I'm loving it, but I'm a slow reader, and this is a complex book, okay? It's really complex. But the more I read about it, the more I dive inside the world, the more complex it becomes on a world building level and on a character development level. But I'm loving it. So I absolutely suggest you to check it out, because as soon as I finish it, I want to discuss this with someone, okay? And this series deserves so much eyes on it. So yeah, I will never stop pestering you about this series. And then I'm rereading Stone and Sky by Z.S. Diamanti, a classic high fantasy, epic fantasy story that is really, really funny, because I'm preparing myself for the second book. And then I am reading Heliotrope by Palmer Pickering, which is incredible. This book is exactly my jam, because the protagonist is so endearing, and the world building is so interesting, and the vibes and the aesthetics of it oh man, the more I read about it, the more I like it. Because Taleo, it's like me, the more I read it, the more I say, oh my god, she's talking about me. Especially at the beginning of the book, because he's kind of a retired warrior, and he's now an artist. He builds mosaics. And I can actually relate with him because most of his job is kneeling and putting all of those little pieces of the mosaic in the right place. And I I love it when he tries to stand up and his knee hurt and his back hurt. But at the same time, he has this really humble attitude toward the worlds and this really wholesome relationship with a specific character that I don't want to spoil, and with the rest of the character that he meets. It's a likable person. I don't know, maybe in the rest of the book I will discover that he is absolutely despicable, but as much as I've read, the small amount of the book that I've read, it's making me fall in love with this specific character and with the aesthetic of it. And there is this strange stuff about heliotropes. There are these pieces of art, those mosaics that influence the world and the world building and the supernatural abilities that he's supposed to have, because he's a descendant of people that were able to do incredible things, but I don't think he's able now. We'll see how the story goes. And yeah, absolutely check it out. It's a chunker, it's a classic epic fantasy story, and I can wait to read it, to finish it. Supposedly this is the first of a series, so I'll let you know as soon as I finish it. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you for staying until the end of the video. Kudos to you. You're a hero, and I love you very much if you've been able to stay until the end to this very long video. And I also wanted to tell you that I have a big announcement, because I will be translating The Way of Adan by Philip Chase in Italian. And if everything goes well, I'm not only super excited to and a little bit scared for this huge commitment, because the story is incredible. I reviewed the book at the end of the last year. It was one of my favorite books of 2023. But I'm really excited because this could be the beginning. Hopefully it is the beginning of a new side of my career, because I am in the process of finalizing many deals with many other authors. So we'll have a selection of incredible high fantasy and sci-fi books from the US and the UK and all around the world coming to Italy because of my job. I'm really proud of that, really happy of that. So I'll let you know more about it as soon as I have more news about those, as soon as I'm able to disclose of those deals. And then I am in the process of filming one of the last videos for this year, which is about upcoming releases in 2025. So if you're an author, or if you're a friend with an author who's in the process to publishing anything in 2025, which is SFF, let me know. Contact me on Instagram, on X, on Blue Sky, or write a comment down below in the comment section. Let me know, because that will be a huge beast of a video, really long, full of really interesting books that I can't wait to read in 2025, and it will be a very nice way to shine a light on authors that really are struggling to have a little bit of visibility and to get the words out, to spread the words about their books. So if you have any suggestion about books that you want to read in 2025, either indie books or traditionally published, let me know. That video is going to be. And of course, remember that if you enjoy science fiction and fantasy books, this is the perfect place for you. So if you want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing, leave a like, share this video. And if you want to see more videos like this right here, right now, you have more videos right here, right now. Thank you again. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.